You are all weirdos.
Weird science is the revolution. Weird science is the revolution.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Best Comics of the Week show. As always, I'm here with my man, Gray. What up, Gray?
Hello, love. How you doing?
Hello, love. Here we are. I'm doing pretty good, and seriously, we have a lot of books. This was a pretty banger week. In fact,
what a week.
We have books that we ended up having to really decide, like, usually we're begging to get things on, and we try to convince why we should. This week, we're like, well, we have so many that some of them, you know, were just there, almost made it, and didn't. But as I say that, I want everybody to know that we really look forward to hearing what all your books of the week are. Because again, as I say on this and my most anticipated preview show, the idea of this is to get people excited about the comics and excited about maybe things they haven't read, maybe they lapsed on. And there's a couple, I think, that people will have, or that we're going to talk about tonight, that maybe they have kind of given up on. Maybe it, you know, gives you an impetus to check back in. But we're going to start because we're going to we got to streamline this. We can't sit there and yakety yak like we always do. Well, we will, but we're going to start with DC as we always do. And we're going to start with a book that I picked. It's Kneel Before Zod, number 5, written by Joe Casey, art by Dan McDade. And it's one of those things, I haven't really been loving the Kneel Before Zod book. It feels a little disjointed. Even now, we're in this end up where Zod, he ends up blowing up his plan. Everything went to hell last issue, and he was just kind of floating in space and got grabbed. And I wondered what's going to happen in this. I think it's pretty fun and almost feels like the Batman Off-World, where he kind of takes revenge on people he shouldn't, grabs pretty much an impromptu army that always kind of reminds me of the Guardians of the Galaxy anytime we have that. And then it looks like going forward, he's going to be running this thing. He looks horrible. He's burnt to hell. It's awful looking. He looks like Deadpool times 10, but in that, I thought it was a lot of fun. Did you read it at all?
I didn't. Like you, I wasn't really enjoying it, so I kind of dropped it.
Yeah, I think that maybe from this point on, because it's a 12-issue mini, it's already gone through some weird things. You know, like the idea of, okay, we're going to deal with Ursa's wife, but then she died. Spoiler, Lorzod ends up leaving. It's so crazy, but I think this was a cool play, and I really, really did like Dan McDade's art, and this makes Zod look horrific. But I liked it, and I'm kind of back on board for now. Maybe one of my favorite books of the week total. But
wow,
we're going to move to you because there's a controversy in the book that you picked here from DC a bit, and I understand it, but I kind of do agree with you with it. What is it?
Okay, it is The Boy Wonder, issue 1 by Junie Barr, who writes and draws it, Jim. Colours by Chris O'Halloran. It's been divisive because there are people saying this is really good and people saying, oh, come on, it's been done before. But you know why I love this? It's a Damian Wayne story. It focuses on Damian, and I think he gets Damian's voice really well. Some great scenes with him and Nightwing, Dick Grayson. And Dick Grayson and Barbara Gordon, spoilers, possibly have a baby. What's going on there?
Yeah, it looks like they're, you know, either living in sin or they're married. and the thing I also saw was it is a Black Label book. It is a little bit pricey.
Yes.
But it feels like it could have been an all-ages book. It feels like something that if you had, you know, younger kids, they would get into this. And the art style is more on the lines of a young adult type deal. So I even saw, like you said, some people said it's just kind of a basic deal. It is a first issue. It looks like you're going to go through, you know, his interactions with all the other Robins, which I love. And I love Damian, too. And when people get him wrong, he's like that brat who, you know, he's insufferable. But when you get the voice right, it's good. But I did see people saying they wish that it was, you know, a $3.99 regular book to maybe get to some kids, not a prestige for them. Because the Black Label, out of continuity, yeah, but also mature. This isn't very mature, right? It feels all ages.
I do love the art style, though, Jim. Samurai Jack, you know, vibes, that kind of thing. Some people said the Teen Titans cartoon series, but he's a very visual storyteller, and that's what got me to like it so much.
Yeah, I saw Teen Titans Go mentioned a bunch, and I'll tell people if you go in, and again, we deal with a lot of different comics and different types of things, even a manga and things like that, where by the end of the issue, I actually got used to the art and actually liked it. It's more stylistic and does go well with the storytelling. But we're going to move on to Marvel. See, we're doing it, right? We're of course, I stopped the yakety yak, but we're going. We're going on a good pace here, right?
Jim.
Oh my goodness gracious! Amazing Spider-Man number 49 is my first pick at Marvel. We're moving to Marvel. here's the shocker. And a lot of people were like, when I reviewed the book, were kind of like, what the heck? Including one Gray here. Like, what are you talking about? Some people actually felt like I was betraying them by actually giving this book an 8. And that's where our cusp is for. It's the bottom part of the deal. But I even said when I did my previous thing, I wondered if Zeb Wells, who I think that he's done a horrible job on Amazing Spider-Man, but would he do good when it's not his story and he just needs to have fun and pretty much all the pressure's off? He just needs to have a bit of fun. I'll tell you, by the end of this issue, if he didn't do one little thing, which I'll tell you, spoiler, kills this vampire guy, and I think it would have even been higher for me. I really like this guy in here who was kind of like, I still have a soul, almost like Angel from Buffy. And then the guy gets killed in this whole roundabout way where Spider-Man is actually helping Kareem, and White Rabbit. And just as a bonus, no Paul. There's a mention of Mary Jane. There's a mention of Robbie. But nothing but just Spider-Man going. He's just kind of go. And the weird thing is, this is issue 49. Next issue is not a tie-in. We get back to Zeb Wells stuff, and then they're going to have a tie-in Spider-Man book by Justina Ireland. It's going to be weird. It's a weird play for this one, but I was actually impressed. And like I said, I'm going to say the same thing in a bit about another book, because I think that it's one of those things, and people forget how good that Hellions book by Zeb Wells was. In the Krakoa
it was
era
very
stuff.
good. Yeah, I enjoyed that too, Jim.
I've not met anybody who didn't like it, and you kind of like, why can't we get that? And I kind of got a little bit of that feel here, because I said he didn't have any sort of pressure, I think, and he just was able to tell this little one-shot story. Maybe he needs that kind of fun factor and feels in that. I got more feels from this guy, this vampire guy who was chained to a radiator, than I ever had for Paul. Right? And anybody who wanted Paul to show up and get staked and done, and then realize he was never a vampire. Peter just staked him and killed him in pretty much warm blood. But we'll move on to the next book, another Spider-Man book that you picked.
Right, this is Spider-Man Shadow of the Green Goblin, issue 2, written by J.M. DeMatteis. It's got art by Michael Saint, is it? Stamaria?
Yeah, Saint Maria. Yeah, I remember we were calling it Star, period,
Star.
and then somebody said, no, that's Saint, you moron. I'm like, okay, I get it. I like the art.
I do too. It's, what do you call it? It's a little bit of a different style. It's almost like an old school style to me. It reminds me of, I don't even know who it is, like 80s version.
I'll tell you who it reminded me, this issue a little bit. Reminded me of Gary Frank a bit.
Oh, really?
The way that the panels, and when there was those like multiple panels with that, if there was a 9-panel grid, then I think it would look exact, but I did like the old school look.
I loved having the Sandman in this, Jim, and I tell you what, this issue moved me. I didn't expect to be like emotionally moved by a Spider-Man issue, because I've been so furious recently about how bad it's been. But James DeMatteis, he's got the experience, he's got the history, he nails the voices. Peter, Sandman. I just loved it. Very human story.
My whole thing, the first issue I thought was a bit, the narration was a little wonky.
Yeah, this is better.
This one, I'll tell you, because, I don't know if you know this, Gray, but like Cyndi Lauper and the girls, I just like to have fun. And when I went into this,
that's what Eric tells me.
Yeah, really. When I have my sleeve potato salad, but you end up where nobody's going to know what that means. No,
I'm still laughing at that.
This is so dark. There's parts that are really sad. Like really, like not fully dark as in like mature dark deal, but like a really like
feels.
sad. And yes, so it threw me a bit, and it almost made my list. It didn't quite, only because I like to have fun at points. But yeah, it's that back in the day deal, and it's dealing with that proto-goblin in between. If you went into the story thinking things are going to work out great for him, I think you're not paying attention, you know what I mean? But it almost made my deal, but it kind of made me kind of too sad. I was too sad to the tears. I couldn't write down the pick because through the tears.
Jim, speaking of hot takes, listen to this. One comment says, this is a hot take, but Shadow of the Green Goblin over Ultimate Spider-Man.
I'm not saying that. Not yet. But even, again, people thought I betrayed them last time when I talked about Ultimate Spider-Man on my review and said that I thought it was a bit down issue.
That was a poor issue, though, issue 4.
A dinner date, but, people get mad. People get really mad. But here we go again, because here's the thing. People have been mad at me, you, everybody, I think, that we aren't dealing with the Avengers. I don't know many people who are reading the Avengers. And again, even though it is Jed McKay's his event, he gets to tell a fun story. I don't have fun in his regular Avengers book. So when you end up having him, has to kind of force him into a team of Steve, Hercules, Hazmat, Quicksilver, and Kate Bishop, Hawkeye, I thought it was fun. I actually had fun with it. A lot of people even read this Avengers thinking that it was like, man, I hope he writes Steve, and I hope he writes this team. And by the way, it's Jed McKay writing, art by C.F. Villia. I like the art as well. The only thing that keeps it down by the end, again, there's that little thing at the end of Amazing Spider-Man, but at the end of this, it's, because there's Cap, we're going to fight not only vampires, but they're vampire Nazis. And then you have Baron.
What a surprise.
Yeah, Baron Blood in that a lot of people like. But even by the end, it felt like where you have the main event, and I'm like, I didn't really love the first bit of Blood Hunt. But then when you get to this feels like the goofy action movie side story. I'm like, I like those. Again, like I said about the Shadow of the Green Goblin, I just kind of like to have fun a lot of times.
This was a lot of fun. Jim, you got me to read this, and I had a great time. You know who I loved in this? I loved Hercules. I thought he was hilarious.
Hercules is great because he's like that dumb oaf guy.
Yeah.
But he actually isn't as dumb, but he is. It's so funny. When they have the one line, first up, they're trying to figure out, if we get bit by vampire Nazis, do we come back? They're like, no, you just become vampires. Yeah. But then there's Hercules is like wondering, why would they line people up and do this? I think they want their blood. He's like, yeah, I think they do. But he was good, and you don't get Hercules a lot. And I thought it was fun. I thought it was really fun.
Nice to see Cap, Steve Rogers Cap, the real Captain
exactly.
America.
Oh, God. Now it's a hot take.
There you go.
People be like, oh, look at that hater. But no, when you go through this, I think you might agree with this. By the end of this event, maybe by 2 weeks from now, how many times can you kill vampires? You know what I mean? That there's not a lot of variety of what you do and deal with. Yeah, you're going to have some people like Hazmat use radioactive, radiation that simulates it, but you're still just killing vampires. And I'm worried about that. So I don't mind when you get the vampire Nazis. At least it mixes it up, but it kind of was eye-rolling.
Some people have said that. It's like, hey, come on, vampires again, really? But, hey, what the heck? It's fun. If it's done well, Jim, it can work.
Exactly. And it shows me, too, where you have Jed McKay go big and dark in that first issue of Blood Hunt. And yet I like the Avengers more because it was just fun. And it was kind of over-the-top action. And
Jim just wants to have fun.
Yeah, that is true. But there are the big two, but actually more big two than we've had in quite some time. We're going to go to the indie books, and we're going to start, and we're going to divide these. We usually kind of willy-nilly, and actually you gave me the better idea of putting them in companies as we go. And we'll start with IDW with a book that you're going to give us the credits, but a book you got me to read thanks to this podcast, and I loved it. I thought it was great.
And this was thanks to one of our viewers and a regular commenter, Fia Monica, got me to read this. Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees. It's issue 6, Jim. It's a conclusion. It's written by and drawn by Patrick Horvath, who from now on I'm going to be looking out for his work because I was that impressed with his series. That's it for the credits. What did you think for this? Because you read it as well, didn't you?
Yeah, oh yeah. It was crazy. And I read it twice, and the second time I liked it even more. It's not exactly the ending that I was hoping we'd get because I wanted to have a definite continuation. And in this, you have, anthropomorphic deals going on, serial killer stuff. It's Dexter with
Dexter meets furries, Teddy Ruxpin.
Exactly.
Richard Scarry.
It's so funny. It's Dexter Ruxpin is what we'll call it. And so there's this young bear, Nigel, not even a bear, the young kid, Nigel, who is almost like a wannabe serial killer, and then Sam, a bear, this woman bear that is a serial killer, and they kind of have this interaction throughout this. I thought that Nigel was going to continue, though.
No spoilers, Jim. No spoilers.
I don't think anybody likes Nigel, right?
No,
so we won't spoil it because
he's
it's
a little
so
copycat
crazy.
Mouse, isn't he? But I tell you what,
said bear, he's a mouse.
Satisfying, and I'll just say that satisfying with the ending.
Very satisfying, and makes it in a way. This is how great this is, and I'm telling anybody, if you haven't read this and you like true crime, which I don't. I mean, that's how good this is. If you
Same
like
here.
serial killer, I'm not even into Dexter that much. Like this sort of thing. Usually, again, I like to have fun, but it's done so well, and in this way that if you look at it and see, bears and mice, and that you're gonna miss out because it's that you forget about that, and even that's worked into kind of the nature of things. It's really good, but by the end, without spoiling it, you end up having a finish that could just end it. We'll never see anything again.
Yeah.
Or we could have something announced next week. It's an open
That's
deal.
why I think it's so good. It does leave it. It's half open, Jim. It ties it up nicely, but it's also, hey, this could go somewhere else.
I'm
it really could.
I want to make sure people realize this isn't like, oh my God, what just happened? Oh no, no. This wraps up in a way that is completely satisfying. It's upsetting, satisfying for these 6 issues. If it never continues, you get a full story. There's nothing, but it can continue. If it continues, it's kind of the nature of it, the way that it plays. And I say nature a lot because, again, we're dealing with animals and things like that, but you have dealt with even what the nature of a bear would be and what you deal this and whatnot. It's crazy good. It's what it is. It's really good. I think, again, I already said earlier about Before Zod, but my favorite 2 books, this is one of my favorites in here, like full favorite, is this Beneath the Trees. And I thank you and everybody else, because a lot of people did suggest it. But we'll move off then to Dark Horse, which is another book of yours. I didn't read this, but I do want to catch up and read it. It's only on number 2, right?
Yeah, this was a surprise, and this is thanks to watching, just a random YouTube video from a comic store recommended. It's called "Monsters Are My Business and Business Is Bloody," issue 2, written by Cullen Bunn of all people, Jim, and art by Patrick Piazzalunga. Hard to say that there. There we go. What's it about? It's how to even summarize this? It's basically, it looks like it's going to be a silly, fun, daft kind of story and very cutesy style art. Well, not cutesy, but
it's very cartoony. The art is very cartoony, yeah.
But it's so much fun. It is so much fun. It's basically, what's the word? A bounty hunter story with monsters, and there's a koala with a chainsaw. Do we need to say any more, Jim? Come on.
Yeah, no. and it's funny because Cullen Bunn, I like Cullen Bunn. But Cullen Bunn does a lot of horror stuff. That's not my thing.
Yeah,
again, I keep saying that. Yeah, I don't. When it's like pure horror, and even like pure slasher like that, it really isn't my thing. But going through this, and when you said, I didn't know that you had read the first issue, and you were saying, "Oh, I think this is going to be on my deal," and I wanted to read these 2 issues. It's only on the second issue. When I did look through, it's like the art is and over the top in the way that like real over the top of like giant weapons. The guy looks like he's a roadie for I don't know, for like Metallica.
Yeah,
but he's a bounty hunter.
He's ridiculously over buff, isn't he? He's really muscular. He's got an axe.
Huge. He's got an axe. Like, Iron Maiden is a good deal. Like that's Eddie shows up out of nowhere. But you even have like Cthulhu monsters, but they're kind of cartoony. You have a koala bear with the
tentacles.
Yeah,
it looks
really
it's only
cool.
a 4-parter as far as I know. There's only 4 issues listed at the moment, so it might be a mini, but it's not clear. But yeah, if it is, that great. It's done. It's a story that's done.
And I'll give a shout out because we usually just give art, pencil and deal, but the colors by Marco Bracco, pretty cool too. There's really
nice
cool
one.
colors in it.
That.
You have a lot of different greens and hues and reds, and it looks like that supernatural kind of deal. It almost looks like a video game type deal. Like they could make something from that.
I can see that.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm gonna check that out, and hopefully the next issue's strong. And
only $3.99 as well, folks.
Yeah, that's pretty good. We're gonna move to Image to end this, and you end up. We have 2 from Image. I will tell people that we were going to talk about the Energon Universe book, but it was a free comic book day book, and I decided by the end we're going to keep this tight and we're going to go. But that I suggested, and I think I may have a video for that up, maybe even tomorrow or the day that this one goes up. So we'll see all that. But we're going to deal with 2 books at Image, 2 really good books. What are we starting with, Gray?
Oh my God, is it me? Okay,
yeah,
we're starting with The Sacrificers, issue 8, written by Rick Remender, art by Max Fiumara, colours by Dave McCaig. Dave McCaig. Jim, I don't know if you read it or not, but this series, it took a break, it took a hiatus before the last issue, and I'm so glad it's back because I am back in the story. It's pulled me in. It's fantasy, it's a little bit of horror, but it's very emotional again. Be careful, you're going to get your feelings moved in this series.
This is another one you can't really spoil.
You can't.
At the end, but you find out some things, and we already kind of know things aren't what they are. And then you find out, like, people don't realize, like, it's one of those crazy plays where everybody thinks one thing, but you have characters who know the real thing, but it's crazy.
What's really going on? What's really going on?
Yeah, what's really going on? And it's really tough. Good. It's like The Invisibles. I mean, you do from Grant Morrison. There's that hidden deal where everybody thinks, oh, the gods this, the gods this. Oh, my God, you upset the gods. But we realize that's not what's happening.
Only $3.99 as well, and if you just get it just for the art, I love this art style.
Oh, it's great.
Really,
it's so
really
great.
do.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's probably people would know definitely, but I think the art's going to change. I think there was an announcement that I remember seeing an email, and maybe it's like a permanent change. I don't know if it's permanent or whatnot, but I did get some sort of email that I saw the headline, art change coming in July, I think it was. But we'll have to see. But and then when you're reading this, obviously, as I say every time, you go to the back to the letters page and then marvel at the name of it, because I'm the one who named it. I always
what a fantastic name!
It's such a name. The Offerings. Oh my God! For the sake, oh my, it just flows. But we're going to end with the last book. This, and again, I keep saying like, oh, this is one of my favorite. This is my favorite book of the week. It is Geiger #2. Written by Jeff Johns, art by Gary Frank. And again, only $3.99. I'm actually shocked at points that they didn't have this, but it's the new Ghost Machine stuff. This could be $4.99, and I think it'd still be well worth it. But what we end up doing is continuing with the Atomic Knight and Geiger as that rumor of there's somebody that will kind of has the cure to what happened with the Glowing Man. And so when Tariq goes and they go into this town and try to figure out, like, hey, we need you to do this. Give us this name. I heard this guy did this. But instead of just giving it, they have to go do a job. Now, it's wrapped in a bookend story kind of deal of family in a weird way with these wild boars and how you end up where they need to eat. But you end up and actually having the Atomic Knight. He's the one who's like, that has a baby. And you have this weird play of family. They do end up eating, and I thought that there was some really good, weird page turns that you're like, oh my God, but then you're like, okay, I get it. But even by the end, you end up seeing that in this world, even when people try to do the right thing. I mean, you end up having a guy who is stealing a bunch of medicines and things like that. He's a Lennox guy, and you think he's bad, but you find out by the end he's doing it for his family. And he looks at the idea of kind of getting caught by the Glowing Man and the Atomic, almost like, okay, that was our sign. Let's go. We'll be bad. And then it's bad. I'm like, oh my God, there's a lot of feels.
Quite a few twists and turns. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, we see this guy who is kind of chasing down the Glowing Man in his own deal. And this guy's vicious. He's just kind of doesn't look like, I mean, when you see him, he looks like a professor or something. Like,
I know.
He just looks
that
weird,
was a bit
right?
weird. Yeah. The look of his face. Yeah.
But boy, he's using things and weapons, and then you end up where, just as a shout out at the end, you have next month the return of Junkyard Joe, and I know there are a lot of people like that too. So this is really good. The art's great. The story
Jim,
is great.
How good is the art? Gary Frank, you've got to shout out. Some of these pages and panels, they blew me away. Seriously.
That one full page where the Glowing Man's jumping, Tariq's jumping onto the sky, and even this bandit has this mask on, and again, it's in a post-apocalyptic deal, but because of all the things that have gone on, it's almost like the old train robbery kind of play. Like, everything's pretty cool. Now, I will give a little bit, and we're done, but there was a weird play this week that the Image sends out all of the Ghost Machine review copies. They sent out they ended up they sent the second issue from 2 years ago. From from the original run. So when they sent it, I saw some people, and it's kind of a way to get some sus meter going, where people were like, I've read every Geiger deal and I love it, and then reviewed that second issue and not even realizing that it was that issue.
No.
And in that, I asked Gabe, I'm like, hey, did you notice that? And he's like, oh my God. And then he said to me today, oh, did you see that they fixed that? I said, yeah, they fixed it, because I sent an email to them. I yelled at them. I didn't yell. I said, hey, but that's the thing is why I wanted to bring it up and point it out, that you have to kind of be careful when you go, because they didn't rename the series. It's just another volume, but there's not that many issues of it. It's so weird that they didn't read.
That's right.
Like, I said to the person at Image, the idea they could have hey, they should have called it like Geiger going nuclear. Something like that. And I said, that's a great idea. And I wrote back, no, I was joking. That's the worst name ever. But yeah, just to watch out for that and all of that.
One last thing on it, Jim. I've got to say, I think this was a lot better than issue 1, and I enjoyed issue 1. So this is like probably my pick of the week at the moment.
Yeah, again, in my mind, issue 1 felt like a 0 issue. Issue 1 could have been a free comic book day issue, the way that it was just kind of getting you back acclimated and letting new readers know this is where it kicks off. And I thought it was great. Again, one of the fastest reads this week, too. I mean, you zip through it, but it's not like it's nothing there. It's just good and just flows well. And Jeff Johns and Gary Frank work very well together. Hopefully,
the next issue, which is great.
Hopefully they can keep the schedule of these things. Cross our fingers. But that is probably my pick of the week. But I'd love to hear everybody's picks, everybody what you want, even if it's exactly what we did, or if you don't like something that we did, you can throw shade at us, but give us the reasons why, stuff like that. But that's it. We're done. A little bit quick, but we had a lot of books. So we'll see. Hopefully people like the streamlined pace. But thank you for joining me. As always, Gray, please, everybody, go into the show notes and click on a link to go to Gray's channel, the Wakasashi's Tea House, where he has reviews for a bunch of these books. And I was going to say, we're going through these really quick. In the meantime, if you click on both of our channels, we have some of these books covered as well as full reviews. So check those out. But thank you for joining me, Gray.
Cheers, Jim.
He is in Japan, by the way, everybody. He's the AI.
Japanese AI.
And I'm here with potato salad in my sleeves. So that is it. And we will talk to you all later.
You are all weirdos.
Weird science is the revolution. Weird science is the revolution.